the overview digital capability management model. And just really to introduce a little bit about us, we'll go through the whole why digital capabilities management model. Why do we need another model? And why are we, or why do we present this as a next generation model? So we'll cover all that area. And it really comes from the hard work, blood, sweat and tears of Zdeněk Vapel, who is the CEO of Q4I and lead author. And the contributions of myself, Jonathan Boyd, really to kind of help bring this all together. So we'll go ahead and we'll get started. So first question is really, why DCMM? Why do we need something new? And I think when we look at the industry as a whole at the moment, there's really only a couple of paradigms that present IT, that create a model or a vision of what IT actually is and what it's there for, what it does, what its purpose is. The first one is based around the service provider model. And the other one is based around the software development model. Really, these are all kind of, over 20 years old at least. Yet we've seen so many changes in business, in the marketplace, in our industry, such as artificial intelligence and machine learning, digital intelligence. The systems are becoming incredibly complex, where it's no longer repetitive tasks anymore. And the emergence of what is being termed the digital economy. These things that have come out in the last sort of 2 decades aren't really reflected in the models that are there because they predate them. And I guess we have to kind of ask the question, how can IT really be viewed as progressive and future focused if we're still using the same old models that date back to even the days of Henry Ford, etc. So the main problem that I see with those models is, certainly from my perspective, in a lot of ways they become very dogmatic. For example, taking just one from ITIL, is that every IT organization should act as a service provider. It doesn't really explain why. And as you'll see as we go through, that presents its own challenges. And aside from that, we also have Agile, which is around software development. So it's all about really asking the customer what they need and delivering software faster and of higher quality. So what is the problem with the existing models? So as we've touched briefly there, ITSM and Agile are really constructed with that same thinking, that same logic. And that is that the customer is doing all the thinkings and specifying all of the requirements and really makes all of the decisions. And what that does is it puts IT in a very reactive position. All sorts of reasons for why that's happened and why that's occurring. Really what we want to do is create a much more positive role for CIOs, much more positive vision for IT. We don't want to create a separation between our colleagues and the IT function. When we do that, I think it creates a lot of very expensive processes and practices that we do to support that external relationship that aren't actually needed, that aren't actually adding to the overall organization. And it takes the focus away from innovation and places it more on just improvement, so improving what we currently have rather than innovating anything new. When we look at the visualization of those models, this is taking an example from ISO 20000. We can see that even in those visualizations, the service provider and customers, in this case both internal and external, are separated. And the engagement model is about delivering services that you effectively get paid for, and the customer providing the service requirements. Tell us what you want and we deliver it. This is the crux of the issue, and it's a problem that IT's had for a very, very long time, and being able to properly engage, collaborate with the rest of the organization. The problem really is that idea of separating IT and the rest of the organization, creating a kind of gap between our colleagues and ourselves, wanting to call them customers, and the resulting processes that we put in place for really kind of managing and measuring IT performance is better suited to truly separate organizations, and therefore it creates a higher overhead, administrative overhead, than what's really required. And the driving force behind the models that we see really about the kind of economic transaction. That's where they came from. That was their origin, and that's still there even today. But now we're seeing that IT actually needs to solve challenges. The CIO responsibility has grown considerably and become far more business orientated and strategic. So they need a model that's going to better suit that new view of what the CIO should be. And when we start to look kind of the helicopter view, we look at where ITSM came from. So there's the support side for IT ops, really, which says that everyone has to be the service provider. So ITSM was born, and we have a model to manage that area of IT. Have the DevOps, the Agile, etc., which is talking about the software development side, where we have now a model that helps to suit that area. And then when we look at the CIO, who covers everything, who has a hugely wide remit on business, more strategic, what model do they have? Should they be a service provider, or should they be a software developer? That's where the challenge comes from. There's a very real problem in this idea of customer. Who is the customer of the CIO? Everybody. Should the CIO be acting in a way as a service provider to the rest of the organization? And have we ever actually stopped to ask if the rest of the business really want that kind of relationship with it? It's a really interesting point. There was a tweet just recently, actually, from one of the ITSM guys in Europe, and I think what she was saying was, throughout this presentation that they were having, one of the slides showed that self-service is still one of the highest ranking requirements in ITSM tool sets. Yeah, in another slide in the same presentation, showing that when they went out to the business and actually asked all of the people in the organization, experience was of the different channels and communication paths they had with IT, service hit the lowest. It's a great example that I don't think that IT are really listening to what the rest of the organization are saying in terms of how they want to interact with each other. They are looking for something much more collaborative. And that's where DCMM really comes into its own. It's very clear that the CIO world is different of where ITSM and Agile really comes from and what it's there to do, what it's good at. If we look forward, we can see that the CIO has much more challenges. It's a much more active role. They're asked to be involved in digital transformation, increase the capabilities of the organization, be able to support emerging technologies, collaborate across whole ecosystems of partners and internal to be able to come forward and add a benefit to the overall organization. But they have to do this in a world that's constantly changing. It's no longer that factory style where we can see the conveyor belt and we can predict everything. It is unpredictable, changing so fast. To be able to do that. And even when the business are not making decisions, the CIO still has to go forward, to be able to act. This organization, disruption that is coming. The model for the CIO, none of the old models really really support what they're there to do. They only support certain parts of it. CIO has the job of basically trying to piece everything together. Really difficult job of being able to work with the rest of the organization and create new capabilities in such an unpredictable world that we now live in. And this is where things like VUCA, etc., come into it. Got to be able to understand the business requirements, understand the technology, and help them move forward, more strategic, and involved in the business strategy. One of the great quotes kind of guided us through how we position DCMM, the Digital Capabilities Management Model. This one, and I think it's great. You never change things by fighting the existing reality. Change something, build a new model that makes the existing model obsolete. That is absolutely key to what we're trying to do. Offering a new model is more fitting to the modern era and for the CIO, and to give them a positive vision of IT and a more positive vision of what the CIO does and the great work they do, and also add benefits to the overall organization. So it's a much more outward focus rather than just improving the IT function. Looked examples of what was going on out there. A very big part of DCMM was taken from nature, what we saw in nature, and evolution and continual evolution. We brought that in, and we looked and we saw social media networks we're all using every day. In fact, we're using it now. And they are incredibly successful using them. Collaborating together, we create content, we share each other's videos, we feedback, we comment, we receive comments, which helps improve us. That's not based TSM logic. It's based more on collaboration, working together with those in our environment, able to provide something much more progressive, much more positive. And it's interesting to see, when we talk about the like of artificial intelligence and how it's being used in a way that is creating intelligent systems that are continually learning. And that's where the kind of machine learning and digital intelligence comes into things. That all needs to be taken into consideration. Just recently, actually, collaboration was the announcement from Target and Disney, where Disney are going to start opening stores within Target stores, and Target going to start opening their shops near and around the Walt Disney World Resort in Orlando. So these are two organizations that, in a traditional sense or a traditional model, would have viewed each other as competitors. Yet what we're seeing is them actually coming together to say, well, actually, we can work together and offer something better for our consumers who actually pay the organization for what we deliver, what we do. You can see a very clear change between the different things at the kind of the heart of this is all about, the economy. The differences between the Samuelson benchmark and contemporary economics and Core's. There is a very different way that's really controlling behaviors now. MIT did a great report into this, talking about the differences of traditional models of taking resources, making something and selling it and saying we created value, that is much more sustainable and focused on social benefits. That's very, very key to where the markets are going. So the new models that we can see out there today, we can look at things like the ISO 44001, which is about collaborative business relationship management systems. We can look at BRM, which is moving more and more towards that relationship piece. They're identifying the issues that we spoke about, and they're looking to surface and increase the value that's being delivered. And we can look at DCMM, which is the focus of today, An entirely new model constructed from the perspective of the CIO, helping them through this very uncertain and volatile new environment that we're in and achieve the goals that they're being set. While we've seen a number of changes kind of taking place as to what IT is all about. It's gone from being about repeatable, robust processes to being more about services and delivering services to the organization and co-creating what was termed value. The way that we deliver it, the organization can then take that and go and do something with it. And we became more about being agile. It's all about being able to deliver more faster and higher quality. What we're seeing is that it's moving more towards being about collaboration. You know, it's that old adage, you know, no IT department is an island. Start working with the rest of the organization and using our skill sets and our knowledge to be able to advance the whole organization and not focus inwardly, just improving small pieces within the IT department. Very clear fork in the road with traditional service management continuing on that same external relationship and advancing that kind of purpose, that vision of IT. And then these newer models starting to create a much more collaborative, a much more inclusive vision of what IT could be. Rather than just providing services and doing what we're asked, we're actually delivering more to the organization. We're focusing on the ecosystem and we're saying, you know what, we can drive this forward and improve what we're doing as an organization and using those technology skill sets. The crux of the paradigm shift is really this. It's really that simple. Rather than viewing IT as a service provider, we need to start viewing IT as being responsible for the whole organization's digital capabilities, developed through collaborative effort. And we work strongly in DCMM visualization models. Parts of DCMM, we keep coming back to this way of being able to see things. In this model, we're looking at the IT department as working collaboratively with all of the other business functions, working inside those departments, sharing resources. It's about self-motivation, not waiting to be asked to provide a service or to fix something that's broken. What do we do in the middle when those requests aren't happening? How do we improve ourselves? How do we show the business that we can actually help them achieve their goals? We do that through what's called digital agents, which we'll come on to a little bit later. And these principles of DCM, looking at things like the uncertainty, where we're not going to know everything. We're not going to know all the details. We're not going to have all the decisions handed to us, the service definitions. We've got to really actually step up and start doing it. We also have to understand that this requires continual adaptation, constant change. It's not about, you know, just managing a project. A lot of people are starting to talk about digital transformation as not being a project. I totally agree with them. Because digital transformation, there is no end state. It is continual evolution, constant change, and it's really a kind of life cycle, which we'll come on to a second. And it's also about using techniques like and RBA to ensure that what we're doing is done in the fairest way. When we're sharing resources across the different opportunities to improvement, what we want to do is start looking at models that are going to allow us to do that without needing all the information that we just simply aren't going to get. We'd end up in paralysis and not being able to do anything. And it's about the different kinds of activities and how we learn from those activities, how we piece together those stories. A little bit on digital agents. The digital agent is quite simply a mixture of software and applications, hardware, systems, products and services, and indeed the people and resources that are required to achieve this from end to end. So it's not just about IT services, it's about capabilities to the whole organization, things that make the whole organization improve, really shift the needle, to use a kind of a phrase from today. When we see the artificial intelligence and machine learning and creating that layer of digital intelligence across the top of them, we see the idea of a digital or a digital intelligent agent, which is going to continually learn and adapt and change based on those algorithms, which means it's going to be very complex and it's kind of never going to be the same twice, which creates a layer of complexity that requires this kind of model to be able to manage those effects, because it's not going to be as predictable as it was before. We view this as really like a kind of almost human life cycle, where aging happening. So there's kind of pre-birth, where it's an idea, and this is where we don't have all the details. We can not do it because we don't have all the details and run the risk of a competitor with something first, creating disruption and putting us out of business, or we can start to actually use things like RBA and ADRA to be able to apply just the right amount of resources based on the benefits we're going to get at the organizational level. And that's where we birth the idea. We start to develop. The more benefits we get, the more resources we provide to it in order to grow, in order to be able to benefit more of the organization. And as time goes by, it will start to err towards retirement, and it will be replaced perhaps by a new agent, a digital intelligent agent, where maybe we're taking a couple of these agents and we're retiring all of them and replacing them with just one, because we found a better way. It's important to mention just around RBA, so resource benefits analysis. Really the way that we understand whether or not something is going in the right direction, whether or not it's actually benefiting the organization. I see a lot with the traditional models where we do things because best practice says so, but there is no real empirical evidence showing us that there is any benefit to the overall organization. And this is a way that we can remove those. So those things that we don't actually need to do, and only focus on what shifts the needle, what actually benefits the organization. And again, it means that we can put it into a visual context, actually see the amount of resource that are being invested, return that we are getting. That way we can make a better decision on whether something is worth doing, because we can see the resources invested in it and the benefits returned. And if the benefits, the resources, good to go. We change the concept here. I think, value is something that's often misunderstood, and everything gets classed as value. The value that's really created is at the organizational level, because value is whatever the person buying the service at the end of the day actually feels about what they got. Not about IT saying we create value. It's not about that. It's about creating whole organizational benefits, things that actually drive the organization forward. Value is only created at the organizational level when people actually purchase the products or services that we deliver, or use those services that we deliver. And this is a great visualization of that. When you look internally, it's really created by the collaboration of all those different departments, not by any one specific. So it's about the entire system working together to deliver to our customers. And one of the other areas that we created with DCMM was the concept of stories. Now, it's not user stories from an agile perspective. It's looking at the complexity of dynamic systems that we're seeing growing every day, and the unpredictability of those. So we had to find a way to be able to correlate patterns of behavior would enable us to learn and for the organization to learn from work that they've done. The idea of activities and stories was created in order to be able to manage that. Organizational level, one of the other kind of, I think, really important things is a lot of people talk about shadow IT. The only way that shadow IT can ever exist is if IT says it's my ball and you're not allowed. It's this view that technology is theirs and they need to do it and everybody else can leave it alone. DCMM, it simply doesn't exist because we're collaborating together. We all work for the same company. Have that shared purpose, that shared strategy. So with DCIM, we took that very much into the center, created ideas like the DCIB, the Capabilities Innovation Board, to create a cross-functional team to be able to hear out ideas and opportunities and really try and surface those across the entire organization to be able to improve and also to innovate new ways of working, new opportunities on what we can do. We wanted to include emerging technologies as well. I think it's very important to say, these things are coming, whether we like it or not. We can say, different stories is, fake news and, being blown out of proportion. Whether you like it or not, this is actually happening. Artificial intelligence is feeding organizational strategy. It's helping organizations to do incredibly powerful things within their marketplace and outside, and being able to spot trends that no human is able to do. We need to be able to include those within our models, and it goes way beyond just chatbots. It's about the complexity and being able to manage that by providing a simple interface for us humans to be able to understand. That is what artificial intelligence, machine learning, and digital intelligence is designed to do. Make all that simple and easy for us to understand and to consume and be able to make decisions and do the right thing. So the whole idea of DCMM is to create a coherent model that's designed from the CIO's perspective. We are absolutely focused on collaboration across the entire organization and externally. Bring in partners to deliver organizational benefit. It's not about departments, it's about sharing, it's about fairness, it's about minimizing the resources we use just to measure and manage a department. I mean, just think about it to yourselves. If you actually sat and thought, how much does it cost just to measure and create all those reports for all those operational aspects that we do because it's best practice? And can we easily relate that to the benefits that are actually being realized by the organization? That's a very hard ask for anyone. So digital agents. So moving away from just thinking about services, because really there's a whole load more that happens after the delivery of a service that actually is what the business think about and are really concerned about. The stuff that hits the top, middle, and bottom line. The whole idea of the digital agent was to focus on that end-to-end and provide a life cycle. We also include those emerging technologies. Continual innovation, continual adaptation, continual change, not having so much rigor and process that it actually makes change near impossible and highly costly. I think in conclusion, everything has its place. There's no doubt about it. An ITSM is very good if you are indeed an external service provider and if you are perhaps shared service centers. Absolutely. But when you're an internal IT department, it doesn't fit. It's about collaboration. It's about innovation. It's about creating alliances across your organization and externally to be able to advance the whole organization, not just improve one department or one function. I think it's really about being able to create new opportunities for organizations, new business models, things that are actually going to help it in such a volatile and uncertain world. You know, everything's changing constantly. You know, your competition isn't sleeping. People are seeing new and different ways to engage with companies. Even though you don't see someone as a direct competitor, if your customer uses whatever it is that they deliver, and they like what they got and then come back to you, even though you've not done anything wrong, you could still lose because their perception of value has changed. And there's a brilliant example, I think it was Nokia, when their CEO said, we did everything right and still failed. So the whole point of DCMM is to give the CIO a model that's going to help them be able to work in this kind of environment and not to go down that route or fall into that trap of doing everything right but still failing. We have to be able to change faster than ever. We have to have a model that creates an air of simplicity for us to understand the huge complexity of what IT has become and create a much more positive and humanistic approach in IT. If you guys want to know more or go into any real in-depth around any of these topics, in a minute we'll take some questions, but it's also worth mentioning you can go on and look at the book. We also have the ebook, which is available as well, much easier if you prefer that. There's also the DCMM Masterclasses, which is a full-day course to CIOs. We have a 2-day course, which is coming soon. We're going to be launching that real soon, so stay tuned, and we'll be able to tell you more about it. We're also going to develop a masterclass learning. What's worth mentioning is we recently just did one of those workshops in the Czech Republic, which was ran by my colleague Zdenek. And as you can see there, a number of leaders, CIOs from all sorts of different organizations, public and private sector, who came onto the course, and they've actually taken away huge amounts. The feedback was phenomenal on this course. They've taken away a whole load of learning from it, new ideas, new concepts, new ways, and are starting to adapt their strategies based on this kind of model. Just to mention that we have courses that are going to be running in Canada, in the UK, of course, in the Czech Republic, and we even now have them in Singapore. And there will be more coming online as we bring on more partners, etc. And some of the benefits that we're starting to hear back from early adopters are just listed at the bottom. Enough of me talking at you, and this is your opportunity to ask any questions or give any feedback.
Jonathan, hi, this is Trevor Hunt here. Can you hear me?
Hi.
Hey, I'm a CIO for MUFG Investor Services. I work very closely with Bruce Simpson, who's also on the call here. I'm very intrigued with the model. It's one that I've been pushing for internally, not under a DCMM label, but certainly getting IT co-located and really working with the business. I've done it many years ago, having sitting next to traders and getting stuff done instantly rather than having to go through the whole life cycle and even agile, right? That takes weeks to get things done rather than within the day. Now, my question for you is around key person risk. The slight danger of this distributed IT organization model is you end up with key person risk because you don't have a group of people that are able to work on things. You end up with individual specialists with the different team. So my question is twofold. Number one is, how do you handle the key person risk in this model? And secondly, is a digital agent a person or a thing?
So let me answer the simplest one first, if I may. So a digital agent is not a person, and it's more a group of things and people. Really a capability that's delivered to the whole organization, made up of software and processes, the people who actually enact them and take the actions to create that. The second question is a good question, and it's an interesting one. I think one of the kind of key things in DCMM, which I guess I didn't cover here particularly well, was around also moving away from single point of contact. So for a lot of these complexities, it moves to more kind of multiple point of, and you're right in that we have people kind of out within the different kind of areas who are, I guess, gaining understanding, but their specialism will always still be IT, but they'll gain more resources or more understanding from their resource use in the different departments. Zdenek, do you want to also kind of comment on that one?
This is a good question. The idea, or we didn't want to prescribe the management logic in a very big detail. The point is that CIO is responsible for structuring his department and his team. So the traditional management logic, like team leaders, divisions, it remains. So we respect that some difficult decisions should be taken by department or team leaders. The digital agents in general would help managers to make decisions. We do not prescribe that the digital agent is managing humans. It's the opposite direction.
Okay, thanks for your answers, guys. It's clearly an area that needs maybe a little bit more thought, because, you know, once those people are out working super close with the business, you somewhat lose control. Their work gets determined iteratively by the people they're working with. And the role of the CIO becomes more of a advisor rather than a controller. But I've loved the slides and the talking points that we've had here. I'll hand over to other people to ask questions to.
Just off the back of that, I'd really like to kind of follow this up with you as well, because I think it is really interesting to get some more of your thoughts kind of around that and experiences, because you're right. But then those people out in the business also have to kind of bring that back to the hub, if you like, where that innovation is being brought from, as well as taking their expertise out to the rest of the organization. I'll have to come back to you on that as well.
Yeah, you can find me on LinkedIn. You can find me there. I would say the answer to that is actually collaboration tools. If we move away from functional specs and all that kind of groovy stuff, and we're actually, you know, developing stuff based on online information, we're using tools like Slack and Teams, that body of knowledge starts to grow and loosen those key person dependencies. But let's talk separately, Jonathan.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you.
Hi, Trevor. Just on that, my name's Barry Clark. I'm a quality manager, IT professional. I'm helping at Key for IT as well. What we've done, or what we've found great success with is when we look at single points of failure within an organization, we're not just looking at the technology stack, we're also looking at the as well. And we try and spread digital capabilities across more than one person to try and avoid those single points of failure when we're doing the assessments. So from that standpoint, we can look with a broader brush across an organization, providing IT support, and if that's centralized or not, that in itself becomes a single point of failure, if you like. And we believe that the distributed model is a much better model from a digital capabilities perspective. If we're distributing support, especially at the first line or the break fix level, back to within the business, then we're also looking at single points of failure from the human perspective as well.
Barry, that's a great point, and I do exactly the same. I have all of my team leads perform key person risk assessments on a quarterly basis. and get people to rate themselves on their ability to support things, so that if someone leaves, I know an exposure I'm running. The human element of this is significant. The particular complication we have is that we are a combination of different mergers and acquisitions. And unfortunately, the replacement of technology, legacy technology, never happens quickly enough. End up with these pockets of people who are the only people that know how to support X, Y, or Z. And that's where it really gets painful. It's the kind of unsexy stuff that nobody wants to support, but if it doesn't work, the business comes down on top of you.
Yeah, I couldn't agree with you more, and it's something I trip over pretty regularly. I'm based in Canada. Over here, there's lots of mergers and acquisitions going on, and when we are providing assistance with developing strategy, often the priorities are given to looking at the legacy solutions to try and mitigate those risks of those resources, with the limited knowledge holding the companies to ransom, if you like. So it's a really valid point, and I would really like to be involved in a conversation with you at some point to do some discovery around that.
Set that up.
Thank you.
Anybody else got any questions?
One question in chat from Jeremy. Digital agent, which looks like service, and DCMM, the story which reminds value. So my question is, I had many conversations regarding digital agent and service. The point is that some CIOs, or I would say many CIOs, who are acting as a service provider for 10, 15 years, they want to bring something new. And if someone is happy with acting as a service provider, and if the business is happy with IT acting as a service provider, then that's fine. There is no reason to migrate to DCMM. But we know there are many CIOs who want to migrate to something better, more recent, more modern, supporting things like chatbots, artificial intelligence, machine learning. And things like Alexa is difficult to describe through service model. It's impossible to define SLA for chatbot. So this is my response.
That's quite good as well. You know, the idea of when we look at machine learning, is that a service? We define that, because it crosses so many different areas, and using artificial intelligence and machine learning doesn't really fit the kind of standard service definition. And what we're talking about is really something that is acting within the organization. And like I mentioned earlier, you know, that includes the kind of people, the processes, the software, the technology that's being used together to deliver a capability. Something that the organization can now do, something new for the organization, will provide it potentially in the private sector a competitive advantage.
So there are no more questions, so I suggest to thank everyone. If anyone is interested to get the slides, we will provide it. And maybe we will also upload the webinar recording at our web. So if someone is interested, let us know. info@q4it.eu.